There, I think I have everything I need. It's going to be a short video tonight. I'm actually recording on Friday, and it's because I've been very busy. I've been very busy working on creating the Book of Days for the summer edition, which I will have available May 1st. I will have available on May 1st, if not before, because it will go from June to June, July, and August. So summer. But today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one feature in every Book of Days, and I'm going to show you what my winter 2024 Book of Days looks like. So that you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, I was probably being silly by stacking all this up so close to where I need it to be, but I can just put it over here to the side. Oops. There. I've noticed in my last couple of videos that I am cutting off the bottom of what I'm looking at. I'm trying to get things correct, and so I use this strip of beads to help me keep things in focus, and I think that's been a little too low. So this is the Book of Days, a used Book of Days, where all the pockets have been constructed and journaling has happened and so on. And I want to keep my privacy because I actually do use the Book of Days, but I'm willing to show you one thing, and it's right here. Oops. Wow. It takes up the whole screen. Okay. So, this is the symbols and signs pages. And there's a pocket in between them, which makes it easy to find if you're working somewhere else and you need to flip back. It's having pockets sort of dividing the book up makes things a little bit easier. And because, you know, you use one book for a season, it becomes sort of a scrapbook. And so you can tuck things in pockets. They're all the way through, and that's another story. But I've had questions about what to do with the symbols and signs pages. And the answer is anything you want. Period. Ignore them, fill them in, use them the way I do, come up with your own things that you would like to keep track of. For me, on my symbols page, I keep track of my daily tarot card readings. I usually do here I did 3 card readings most days. February was a rough month for me, so I abandoned my Book of Days, which happens. You do that. And that's part of the memory once the season is over. There are some journal entries in the back of the book that talk about why I was struggling so much in February. But I think it's fairly understandable that as a relatively recent widow, I sometimes struggle. Also, I am bipolar. And so even without extraordinary circumstances, I tend to flux and flow. So whenever I show you my actual book, you're going to see that mostly I do good, or I do good for long periods of time, and then I kind of fall off the wagon. But I always go back, and that has an immense amount of value for me. So anyway, on the symbols page, I keep track of tarot, and on the signs page, I use that for a bunch of different things. In this season, I was using a deck about hummingbirds. There's a reason for that. And I was just pulling at night before I went to bed one hummingbird card from the deck. And so these are the results from that. So what I wanted to talk about is how this actually works. There are 3 columns, identical columns, on both pages, and they are listed with the month. So there's 2 Decembers here, there's 2 Januaries, and there's 2 Februaries. And then down the sides, it is just a very short little line where you have room to just make a note. Now, if you're doing full-on tarot spreads, or if you need to write down a dream that you had, there's not enough room on these pages to do that. But it's meant to be a bit of an index for things in your life that strike you as symbolic, or that might be what you would consider a sign. And again, that can mean whatever it means for you. But in that case, if you want to write more than these tiny little lines will allow you to write, you simply write the page number, and then go back here where there's no journal entry at all, and you'll see that the page numbers are always the same. There's 60 journal pages in every Book of Days. Now, initially there were the numbers varied, but now that the format has solidified, it's 60 pages. And so if I, for example, had done a full tarot reading, I might just make the page number notation on that line and then write out my thoughts about the reading itself. Similarly, if I had a dream that I felt was important, I would write the page number of wherever I wrote it in the journal. So that's how that works. And I think you've seen it now. So I want to talk about various ways that you might use it for you. I grabbed all those decks, and the one that I didn't grab was the Hummingbird one, so I thought I would show it to you. I knitted this bag while I was in the hospital with my husband, so it is particularly special. And my husband, for years, has fed the hummingbirds. And so I went looking for a deck that featured hummingbirds, and I found this one. I will list the names of all the decks that I'm going to show you briefly. I'm not going to go through card by card, but I'll list the names of the decks in the description box below in case you're interested. I will say that this is a very sentimental deck for me, but it is not the easiest. It's an oracle deck, not a tarot deck, and we're going to talk about oracle decks a lot in this video as my kind of first recommendation if you don't already read cards. And they come in every conceivable topic with every conceivable tone and mood. And this one is very sweet, and that's what I needed at the time. That's what I needed for the winter. I will say it's not particularly legible sometimes. This is very small writing up here. And I'm going to say it's a little corny, but it's, like I said, it's sweet and it's loving, and I particularly liked it because it has some very practical advice in it. Things like bird bath, which I took to mean I should take a bath, or sweet nectar, which made me think, okay, maybe I need to eat something other than Fritos. So yeah, there's some very practical little bits of advice in here, and lots of sweet ones that say something like a message from heaven. So I love this deck, and I will always keep it in this bag. And I still do a nightly pull, but I'm not recording them anymore. So there's that. Okay, so let's talk about oracle decks first. Again, if you are interested in having a daily check-in that makes you think, an oracle deck might be the best way for you to go, especially if you just don't really have an interest in learning how to read the tarot yourself, which is a more complicated system, and it takes time to learn. So I think that you can absolutely use either the symbols or the signs page with a single oracle deck. And as I said, they come in a lot of different themes, and I have a few of them here to show you just briefly that are some of my favorites. I do not have a billion decks, but I'm very selective about my decks. So this one is called the Winterseer deck. This is the backing. and it features animals primarily from the Northern Hemisphere, primarily from, well, Europe and Canada, North America. And they have images in a kind of a watercolor, and then they have the name of the animal, and then they have a keyword. And the keyword, all keywords on all oracle cards, are really just an opportunity for you to think about, what does that keyword mean to me right now? So this is, I just love this deck. I think it's beautiful. And I think it's very comforting and, again, reassuring. Now, it has some cards that I think I saw death here a second ago, which is indicated by the raven. Generally speaking, in cards, when you see the card death, whether it be in a tarot deck or an oracle deck, it is talking about the death of a thing. Now, of course, technically, it could be a person or a beloved creature. But most of the time, 99.99999% of the time, it is talking about the end. And it tends to be a traumatic ending. So it could be, it could be the ending of a job. It could be the ending of an emotional connection. It could be the ending of a dream. And it is, if you're taking the cards that you're reading as something that potentially predicts what is about to happen or what is going to happen in the future, it's wise to think about the variations on what it means. I don't necessarily do that for my personal readings. I am using cards for my personal day-to-day use as a key to my own psychology. When a death card shows up, well, for me, that's not that unusual right now. It just gives me a moment to acknowledge. I don't need help remembering, but to acknowledge a feature of my life right now. So, but here's just a fabulous thing about decks of cards. If you do not like the death card, you can remove it. I know, it's heresy, but you can. If there's a card in your deck that you find distasteful or frightening, and yet there's value in other cards in the deck for you, take out the cards you don't like. Maybe for a while, maybe when you're fragile or vulnerable. Maybe someday you'll want to put them back into the deck. But they're your deck, it's your brain, it's your heart. You can do whatever you want to with it. Anyway, so that is one option. Here is another, also just an oracle deck. Names will be below. Beautiful backs. I just think this is the most beautiful card. Gold edging. And this is a more serious deck. And so we have Answer the Call, Navigate with Heart, Journey, Garden in the Heart. Again, phrases that are just meant to help you pause and consider what's going on in your life, or what might be coming up in your life. Establish sanctuary, receive your worthiness, and so on. Again, just absolutely, look at this twirl. I love this card, and I actually get it fairly often, which makes me happy. So, another option. And then, for those of you that just don't like anything that's very particularly woo-woo, and that's fine. It's a little odd that you would be buying a bit of Witchy Book, or researching a bit of Witchy Book, if you have no interest in the astonishing, the magical, the unusual, the fateful. But if that's not your thing and you still want to use the Book of Days, or, mind you, you can do this practice without having the Book of Days. I will always say that. This book is a collection of all of the journaling practices and the tracking practices and the bullet journaling practices that I have experimented with over the years, and I've kind of extracted the best bits and pieces and put them all into the book. I think it would be really, really hard for anybody to actually use all the pieces all 3 months in a season. I think that would be difficult. I never do. Sometimes I use the trackers and graphs, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I use primarily the journal pages. Sometimes I use simply the logging. Sometimes I just use the seasonal section to sort of plan out what I want out of the coming season. So, anyway, I digress. Okay. Just to show you the variety of decks that are available to you, and TarotTube, the TarotTube hashtag, or maybe there's an Oracle hashtag, I'm not sure, on YouTube, will quickly throw you into a world where you can watch people, fabulous people, wonderful people, showing you their decks because they love them. And it's a great way to relax for me. Anyway, here's a deck that is different from those, and it's the Surrender deck. And it is directly speaking to you from a psychological and emotional standpoint. And it is designed to be a deck of cards where you just choose one a day, or one a week, I suppose one a month, and then consider the suggestion that this is making. Now, this is a new deck to me, and I am using it right now, and this is in fact what I am tracking in my on my signs pages. My symbols page is always my 3-card readings in tarot, and then, like I said, my signs page, sometimes I track other things. So yeah, I am drawing one of these cards, and I should show you cards while I'm talking. And I like it. I do. I think it's very proactive, and I haven't run into anything as a suggestion that I don't think applies to me. I like the fact that sometimes you're surrendering to a thing, to a positive, like your full power, and sometimes you're surrendering what would be considered a negative or difficult emotion, like surrendering worry. Just to let you know, like I said, this is a new deck, and I edged this. It does not come this way. It comes with just a plain, edging, like that would look. But edging cards is very easy. You need markers, and you're just be careful with it so that you don't, draw on your cards. I will say, edging this deck was very easy because it's very shiny and very slippery. Oh, I didn't show you the back. So there's the back. It's very shiny and slippery, so if you slip off the edge, which is exposed, it's very easy to just wipe off any little mark that you make on it. So if you're going to start with a brand new deck, and this has some appeal to you, and you would like to figure out what it feels like to make a pretty pastel rainbow, I'll make note of the set of markers I bought specifically to do this, as well as the name of the deck. So those are 3 examples of Oracle decks, plus of course the Hummingbird deck was an Oracle deck. And I think that's an excellent way to key into the practice of drawing a single card on a daily basis, and then tracking what cards repeatedly show up, tracking, and where you write about how you feel about the card that you drew. That's the whole point of the signs and symbols pages. Now, I will say, you can also do, like I mentioned earlier, that you can use it to track your dreams. You can use it to track things like actual signs that you notice in the world. One that strikes me frequently is I notice every time a hummingbird shows up. I just do. And in a traditional sense, cardinals. Cardinals tend to be considered a visitation from someone who has passed on. That's a pretty classic sign. Or finding a 4-leaf clover, or finding a penny. I had to stop recording because my neighbor came home from work in a very happy mood and was singing on his way into his house. So, yeah, we'll just start again. Well, not start again. Move on to the next section, because I think I covered the sort of signs that we all sort of are aware of. I'm going to finish up with, and I was also going to mention, though I personally don't, my eldest child throws the runes. And he could absolutely keep track of his throws using the Book of Days signs or symbols. Symbols would be very cool, actually. But it's just not something that I personally do. So I want to finish up with the idea of tarot. Now, I know everybody who is interested in the Book of Days is not interested in tarot, but I will say this. If you are interested in learning the tarot, I have a really strong recommendation, and that is to buy yourself a tarot deck, and I'm going to tell you specifically what kind I recommend, and then draw one card a day for a very long time. Now, you can play with your deck outside that. You can, because you can buy a pack of tarot cards, and it's going to have at least a little white booklet that tells you the meanings of the cards, the classic traditional meanings. And you can play with them. Whether or not you're doing that, I'm going to tell you, pull one card every day, even if you don't have time to read what it is. Because obviously, if you're just beginning, you don't necessarily know what the meaning of the card is. I also think it's very, very helpful to just jot down what that card is. I do not recommend starting with a daily 3-card draw. That's overwhelming. The way to learn tarot is a little bit at a time, over time. And that's when I moved from being a casual reader about 3-4 years later of literally just concentrating on the one card I drew every day. That's when it clicked for me. So that's going to be my recommendation. And if you are interested in learning the tarot across the board, so that you can read multiple different decks, I'm also going to suggest that you get a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. The more classic, the better. Because most tarot decks that are on the market right now are at least a nod to the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot. There are a couple of other systems. There's the Thoth or Thoth. Different people pronounce that differently. And there's the Marseille deck. Both of those I don't resonate with. I like Rider-Waite imagery, and I'm willing, now that I've got more experience, to kind of go off in other directions on cards with decks that are only loosely based on Rider-Waite. But for your basic learning, I recommend you get a standard Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. Now, they come in you can still get them. Like, you can get a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck that has all cats. Instead of having human figures, it would have cats. So you still can make it very personalized to you, but you want the imagery to be very classic. This is my original deck. I should have my book out, but that's for a different thing. It's not edged, it's just worn out. And this is the deck that I learned on, and this is the deck that I drew a card from every day. So these are the images that are going to strike you as familiar. Probably, if you've ever had any exposure to the tarot, had a reading, or if you're here, you've probably at least had some passing reference to it. And, like I said, this is a very classic edition. I don't even actually know what this is called. If someone knows what this deck from the very early 90s, I'm guessing, actually is called, I would love to know, because I've seen the backing in other people's... Anyway, sorry. So, alright, so here we have the Queen of Cups. Now this is a very different vibe. I picked this deck up and I edged it in black. It came with the gray. But I picked this up at TJ Maxx or one of those stores for like $6. And it's a beautiful deck. And it's a very stylized version of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's all in black and white with just hints of color, depending on the suit. So this Queen of Cups, for example, I keep this deck in order now so that I can use it for reference. And you can see some of my edging is... This is what happens when you edge a deck. Sometimes it flakes off when you have to edge them again, which just is, you know, an afternoon of watching TV and re-edging and spending a few minutes with your deck. Anyway, so we're looking for the cups page. There she is. Okay. So let's look. You see? If you know this card, you know this card. And I just think that's the easiest way to learn tarot. And I think that is the end of this video. I hope. And I am so sorry for all the noise, guys. I'm sorry, there will be a disclaimer at the front of this. I normally film late at night because I live in an apartment complex and life is noisy. And I kind of like the noise of life going on around me, but I can imagine that is probably pretty irritating to you. So forgive me. Good night. Now I have to edit this video. See you next week.